Welcome to Gridbusters. So today what we're going to do is we're going to finish off installing this Victron smart solar charge controller so that we can then get all the solar panels installed. So the first thing today to do is I'm going to take this off the backer board because it's just a temporary backer board. We're then going to connect up the solar cables and we're going to crimp up the battery cables as well and get the earthing also installed. So let's crack on with everything. So you'll have to bear with me. It's really cramped conditions in here. It's very difficult to move the camera around. So I've got a portable camera set up here, which I'm going to put around my neck so that you guys can see the close-up footage. So hopefully it will come out okay. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is take off the charge controller. I'm just going to put that down over here. And then I'm just going to unscrew the board here. So a few of you were asking about the backer board here and its MDF. Some people were worried that it wasn't fireproof. Maybe I should, am I using fireproof paint, etc.? And it's a really good question because I think a lot of people overthink this. And it's actually, if you've ever tried to burn MDF, you'll know what I'm talking about. So if you've ever tried to put MDF on a bonfire or in a log burner or something, you'll notice that it doesn't really burn. And you know, a lot of people disagree with me on this. So a while back, I actually did a test to see how well MDF would burn. Check this out. Okay, so there's only one way to settle this debate, and that is with a flamethrower and some MDF. Let's see what happens. So let's get the gas on. There we go. That's seriously hot. Okay, let's see what happens. So we can see it's smoking and it goes black, but it's not caught on fire. Okay, so we can see it's a lot of smoking, a lot of charring, a lot of black. By this point, I think the whole room would have gone up, considering, you know, there's combustible stuff on the ceiling, there's other equipment, there's plastics. So I think, you know, MDF is fine. I mean, they actually do fireproof MDF, which is basically the same thing with just a coating. But, you know, I'm quite happy with this. If the Victron was, you know, had caught on fire and had this much heat, you know, if we had a fire like this going on inside the plant room, I'd have much bigger issues by now. Right, so I think you'll agree that MDF is okay to use as a backer board. So anyway, I'm going to take this off here. There we go, I'll just set this down. Not sure how well you can see that, but and then we're going to put the battery cables are going to stay here, but the solar cables are going to actually go through the wall because I've actually got the solar cables already installed behind this board here. Now the irritating thing is they're not actually long enough because originally I was thinking I was going to put the charge controller over there, so they're about 2 or 3 meters too short. So we're going to extend the solar cables up behind the wall and have them coming out here in a hole. So I'm going to cut a hole in the wall here, and then we're going to cut some cable to length and crimp on some MC4 connectors. So this is where I marked out to drill a hole. Irritatingly enough, there is of course a beam of wood going right in the middle of this hole. So I'm just going to move this hole over a little bit, doesn't really matter. I've already looked behind to make sure there's no cables there, so I'm pretty sure there's no cables there. So Okay. And actually I was very lucky there because the beam is right there. It's quite a, I did a double beam going up here, so it's quite a wide one. Oops. So let's see how well you can see that, but yeah, so here are the solar cables. So these cables here go all the way over to the barn, and very annoyingly, I didn't leave enough slack. I actually broke my #1 rule, which is always leave loads of extra cable, because you never know what you might need in the future, and I broke that rule. I think it might have been because I was short of cable when I laid the runs, because normally I would have left 3 or 4 meters spare. So if you're ever doing this, because this was a future expansion cable, so and the future expansion is now, usually when I do that I would leave a whole roll of cable in the wall, because you're never quite sure, you know, where you're going to put equipment and so forth. But I think, like I said, I think it must have been that I was short of cable. There's no other reason I can think of why I would have left this so short. I mean, I was thinking that the charge controller was going to be up there. I was going to put it somehow up there or on that wall over there, which is probably why I left it short. So yeah, really annoying. So what we're going to do is we're going to extend this cable, and that's fine because we're using these MC4 connectors, which are solar, the same connectors as we used on the solar panels. So they just click together. So we just have to crimp some cables up. So the next job is, I think I'm just going to cut some cable to length. So I've purchased some more cable. Here we go. So I think what we'll do is we'll just drop that down. Let's do one cable and then we can cut the negative cable the same length. Here we go. So we've got two strings of solar panels. There we go. Again, I'll make this a little bit longer than we need. So we need 2 negatives and 2 positives. And we'll make it about there, I think. Right, there we go. That's fine. I need 2 of each. So that's 2 negatives. Spare. That's 1. And 2. There we go. Thanks for your comments, guys. Really appreciate your comments. It really spurs me on to make more videos. So yeah, if you've got any questions, any comments, please let me know. Please do leave those comments. I read them all. Sorry I don't have time necessarily to answer all your questions in text form, but what I will do is I will try and answer questions in future videos, if that makes sense. So if you ask a question, I'll answer it in a future video. So yeah, right, so we've got all our cables. Let's get to crimping. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is just cut some of the, we need to cut about 6 millimeters off this cable. This is 6mm cable. So I'm going to cut about 6 or 7mm. Right, there we go. So let's just cut the outer layer off. It actually has 2 layers, solar cable. So there's an outer layer and an inner layer. There we go. So I will just undo these. So I had a question about the charge controller, and somebody was saying about how they thought you know, they looked at the Victron equipment and couldn't believe how expensive it was, and said for the price of one charge controller they could get a Chinese all-in-one unit. And I think that's fine if you are on a real budget. So if you're on a real budget, buying an all-in-one solar unit is absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with that at all. However, they can be a little bit unreliable. So let me just put my... Hang on. There we go. Let me just crimp that now. And... Oh. Sorry, I just want to concentrate on that. It's very important to get a good crimp. So, there we go. So, let's see if you can see that. I'm just trying to get the GoPro. So, hopefully you can see how that is well crimped there. That is how it should look. Very important that these crimps are absolutely rock solid, because if you have a loose connection, that's when fires can happen. So yeah, that is an absolutely perfect crimp. So that's what we need. So yeah, somebody was asking about the cheap Chinese all-in-one units, and I've never used them before. The reason I was turned off them was because if you have an all-in-one unit of anything, it's like a single point of failure. So it reminds me of the days back in the 80s where you used to have like a hi-fi system and like everything was all built in, and if one part of it broke, the whole thing broke. So yeah, that was always a problem. So it was always better to have like separates in a hi-fi system. And it's kind of like the same with the solar charge, with the solar equipment. So if one of my solar charge controllers broke, the whole system wouldn't go down. I would still have two other solar charge controllers which I could use. At the moment, I do have only one inverter, and that is a weak point in the system. And if I was building the system again, I would, rather than having one 10,000 watt like inverter, I would have two 5,000 watt inverters. I think that's like how I would design things differently if I was doing it again, and that's probably what I will do for my next system, which I'm planning to do in about a year's time for a completely different project, is to have multiple inverters rather than just one. But yeah, having an all-in-one unit, it can be a problem. It also puts a massive strain on all the electronics, because we are very, very heavy users. You know, we're constantly drawing, you know, in the winter, we're drawing 10, 12 kilowatts continuously, all day, 24 hours a day, pretty much. So we're very, very heavy users. In the summer, we're pulling in 10 kilowatts or 12 kilowatts, sometimes even more than that from solar. And like right now, for instance, the house is using 8 kilowatts of power. So we're using the system to its fullest extent, all the time. So we need something that's rock solid. Now, a channel which I follow on YouTube, Ben's Garage, really small YouTube channel. He's an English guy that lives in France with his family. And he was one of the people who I learned about solar from. And his system, he has an all-in-one Chinese unit. Nothing wrong with it being Chinese, but it's just an all-in-one unit. And the interesting thing is, he's been through about three different units in the last 2 years. So in 2 years, he's been through 3 different units because they've all broken. They've sent, the Chinese manufacturer is very good. They sent him another one. But it's just, that hassle factor. So for me, it was really important to have something super reliable, which is why I went down the road of Victron equipment. So I hope that clears it up. Right, so I've just pushed that pin into the connector here, and then we put that in here. Let me just tighten this up. And then there we go. So that's done now. A whole bunch more to do. I think it's time for a time lapse.
우리들만 알아들을 수 있는
So I've just installed the solar charge controller up here again temporarily, just to make sure the cables are the right length. And we can see here, okay, so the positive cable, I won't put it in right now, but we can just see where they will go. So, and then that will clip to there, etc. Obviously I haven't, once I've got this cabled up, then I will properly screw this down. And the charge controller has 2 extra screws here which we can install, so I'll install those once we've got everything set up properly. So the battery cables, I'm happy with that length. That red cable, the positive cable, could probably come through a little bit more if I can pull it through a little bit more. There we go. There. So yes, that's absolutely perfect there. Right, so that's all the solar cables completed. So now I just need to drop these down and feed them through. And we can hook them up. So there's the first one. And then that will go through to here. There we go. I'm just going to put a cable tie around those so they don't disappear behind the wall. There we go, it's just a temporary cable tie just to keep them all in place so I don't lose any behind the wall. Okay, so the final thing to do now is we just need to get these cables, which are the battery cables, cut to length and get some ends connected, crimped onto the ends of these battery cables. Now, one thing I have noticed is I have made a mistake, little mistake I've made with the wiring, and it's not a mistake, it's just an oversight really. So I've got, when I connect these all up, I've got 2 positives and 2 negatives here because this is for 2 separate strings of solar cables. However, I'm not sure which positive and which negative go together. I'm not sure which is string A and which is string B. I didn't label them up because this was just a future expansion cable, I guess, when I installed it. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm not going to connect these up to the charge controller right away. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get the meter out and do an ohms test on these cables and find out, so we can identify each end of the cable. So as an example, I need to find where this cable comes out in the barn. I've got a whole bunch of cables in there, and I can label this as, like, string 5 and then string 6. And the same with the, so I can basically pair the positive and negative cables together. Really important. So we just need to identify those. That would be just one little step. I'll put some labels actually on the cables themselves. That's just the system I've been using. And I'll do the same labels at the other end inside the barn. Right, so the final thing now is let's get these monster cables cut to length and all crimped up. Right, so back in the workshop, I'm going to crimp on some of these ring lugs and then put some heat shrink on. So just going to measure this out. I find it, I've tried to use lots of different wire strippers and over the years, and at the end of the day, I just use these Crimping cable cutters actually. They're not wire strippers, they're just cable cutters. And it, to be honest, it seems to do a very good job. So that's what I've ended up using. So yeah, I just find that's why I don't, someone was asking what wire cutters do I use. I have yet to find a really good pair. I did actually once order a pair of official Knipex wire strippers, and they were broken. And I never got round to sending them back, which is so annoying. These ones here, they actually don't work. I'm not sure if these, I got them on Amazon, so maybe they're a knockoff or something. There's an official electrical wholesalers here in town, so I might go in and see if I can get an official version of these Knipex wire strippers, because they're meant to be very good, but these ones don't work. They were broken. So I mean, I can't return them because I bought these like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and it was during a period I was just so busy I never got around to taking them back. It's annoying because they're really expensive. But yeah, I should get a proper set. Not that I could use them for cable this size. Now, I've actually run out of the normal ring lugs that I use. The normal ones I got on Amazon in the UK. I don't have time to order some now. I do have these in stock. The problem with these ring lugs, they don't have a bell opening at the top. So the ones I normally have, the edge is usually like a bell shape, so it's very easy to get the wire in. So it's can be a devil of a job getting every single last strand in without getting one caught outside. So, but yeah, I'm just using what I've got in stock. I've actually got 4 of these left, so I might as well use what I have in stock. So yeah, let's get the rest of these stripped and then we'll get them all crimped up. So let's just get, let's do the next one. There we go. So, now, great day today. We're actually generating 10 kilowatts of solar, and it's October, you know, so Indian summer, as they say, here in Europe. That's what they call it. But yeah, 10 kilowatts of solar. We're fully charging our batteries this week, and all next week it's going to be similar weather. It was like this yesterday and the day before, so getting absolutely loads of solar, so absolutely fantastic. Great. Right, that's another one there done. Great. So just want to make sure I keep those all in. I think I'll just do 2 and then we'll strip the other ones off. So I've just got some heat shrink here. So let's get the heat shrink cut to size, and then we can get these crimped. Okay, so time to crimp my first cable. It's been a while since I've used this crimper. Yeah, that's right. You've got to open this up there. There we go. Right. So let's make sure that's closed. Going to do a double crimp on this so I can get right to the end. There we go. So that's the end result there, and that's absolutely solid. So I've done a double crimp there because the crimper only went up to there, so then we've done another crimp on the end there, and that's all very solid. That's not going to move. So just need to put some heat shrink on that. There we go. A lot of people have been asking me about my pink heat gun here. What's the story behind that? Well, I was on Alibaba ordering some stuff, and they had these heat guns. They're like €6 or something. It's stupidly cheap. You can get them in any colour. So literally any colour for €6. So I got pink. Little tip, if you're ever using one of these hydraulic crimpers, get yourself a bench vise. Doing it without a bench vise, it's really difficult. Or I wouldn't say impossible, but it's, yeah, you'll be on the floor and you'll be trying to hold one thing with your knees and another thing with your leg and another thing with your arm. It's very difficult. So I found it's much easier if you get a vise, which is one of the primary reasons actually I got this vise, but I've actually ended up using it for all sorts of things. So yeah, really useful. There we go. Fantastic. So there's just the other ends of the cable to do that. To crimp, I'm going to do that off camera, and then we can go and get these connected up to the charge controller. Welcome to the next morning. So I wanted to do this section early in the morning because we're going to have to shut down the solar system and the batteries and go back to grid power, because we're going to be connecting up the solar charge controller to the bus bar. I'm actually going to extend the bus bar out with a new Victron links power in. And so we need to make everything safe. So I wanted to do that when we had basically used all of the batteries up. Yesterday was a great solar day. We got the batteries up to, I think, 95%. We had 9 kilowatts of solar outside, so I didn't want to shut the system down then. So we're in the plant room now. It's 8 a.m. and let's have a look. Let me just bring the camera up so you guys can see. But you can see here the batteries are almost depleted. It was at something like 5% earlier, and the solar has actually now just starting to kick in because the sun is just starting to come up. We're actually on grid power at the moment. That's what the system will do. The system will stay on grid power until the batteries reach about 15%, and then it will take over. So what I'm going to do now is shut everything down. So I'm going to, what am I going to do first? So I think the first thing I'm going to do is turn off the batteries, then turn off the breakers, then turn off the solar charge controllers, and then we'll take the cover off one of the links power in, and we'll check it with the meter to make sure it's okay. And if it's all good to go, we can then expand our system out here. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is turn off the batteries. Here we go. And that's all, yep, those are all shutting down. And now I'm just going to shut this down here. It's funny, I keep shutting this system down, I'm getting like flashbacks to the Ghostbusters movie, Ghostbusters 1, where the city officials turn up and they shut down the containment field in the basement. Remember that scene? And Egon's saying, don't shut it down, we're going to have an explosion if you shut it down. So I feel a bit like this because I've only ever shut this system down once before when we put an extra battery in. So this hasn't been shut down for about 6 or 7 months. Right, so we've turned off the batteries, we've isolated the batteries now. What have we got to do now? So I'm going to turn off the solar charge controllers. So I'm going to turn that one off, I'm going to turn that one off. Right, so all of the solar charge controllers are turned off, the batteries are turned off. Right, so I just had a little situation there. So what actually happened was I was still getting a little bit of voltage on the bus bars, and I wondered if I could bypass the Quattro and just literally run the house off the mains without having any power going to the bus bar. So I went into the menu and see if I could do this in the on the touchscreen here. And so I went through the settings, and there was a thing there for the inverter for the Quattro to actually, there was like an on-off thing, and I thought, well, maybe if I turn it off, that will put it in bypass. And it didn't. It actually shut the Quattro down and turned everything off, which was fine. But I thought, okay, that's not quite right. Maybe there's different settings. So I tried to turn it back on, and I noticed that the Quattro had actually disappeared from the touchscreen, and then the touchscreen turned off because there was no power going to the system at all. So we didn't even have a touchscreen. So I managed to get power back onto the touchscreen by turning the batteries back on, because I just remembered that the touchscreen is powered from the batteries. And I turned the batteries off, and so I got everything back up and running. But the Quattro didn't appear on the touchscreen anymore. It had been shut down via software, if you like. So I put the Quattro to the off position and then tried to turn it back on again. Completely dead, 100% dead. I even turned the mains power off, turned everything off, turned it all back on, still nothing. The Quattro just would not come back on. So I didn't even have an internet connection because all the house power was off. So I went down to the bottom of the driveway where we have a very, very weak mobile phone reception, had a look on the Victron forums, and it is a little bug in the software actually where it won't come back on. So what you actually have to do is pull the network cable, the blue network cable, out from the inverter, put the inverter into the off position, and then with the network cable unplugged, turn it back on, and then everything sprung back to life. Then I plugged it back in and it was fine. So had a little heart attack there. The big problem we have with the system actually, and this is something we might put in one day, is I don't actually have there is a transfer switch built into the inverter, but we don't have a transfer switch outside of the inverter. So a transfer switch is kind of like a bypass. So let's say something catastrophic happened to the inverter, it completely stopped working. Well, we wouldn't have any even mains power in the house. So a transfer switch would be like a big like you get in a factory, a big kind of like manual switch, which would have like 3 different positions. There'll be like an off position, mains power position, and then inverter position. And then if we, let's say we wanted to do some maintenance on the inverter, or something went wrong with it, or we're upgrading it or something like that, we could then switch it down into mains only. And then the inverter would be totally disconnected from the system, but the house would still have power. So that is something I might put in. If any of you guys know of any good places where I could get a transfer switch, or know the right kind of thing to order from Alibaba or something, let me know. Or a Legrand one from here in France, if you know where I could source one, that would be much appreciated. We probably need it to be about 100 amps, so a 100 amp transfer for 100 amp transfer switch would be great. So that is something we need to install. Right, so actually what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to completely shut the power down 100%. I'm going to turn the house power off, I'm going to turn the inverter off, everything off, just to be safe. And then we're going to install the power in unit. So let's do that now. I'm just going to go and get a work light so that we can see what we're doing. Okay, so time to shut down the system again. So I'm just going to turn these batteries off again. Let's get everything turned off. Turn off there. Turn off there. I'm also going to shut down our electricity connection. There we go. Everything's going to start complaining. I'm also going to shut down my UPS units here, otherwise they'll be... There we go. I'm going to shut those off. I'm going to turn off the inverter, and I'm going to... There we go. And there's still a little bit of power in the system. So I think we're pretty much good to go. I can see the light is still on there. Oh, there we go. There was just a little bit of power in the capacitors of the Quattro. So there we go, we're on DC. And let's have a look. Yes. Completely dead. Well, getting 5 volts, but as good as dead. Okay, so we're fine with that. Right, so I don't want to have the power off too long, otherwise Dave will complain. He's working on the computer this morning, and I told him that we're going to have to shut the system down. Right, so here we go. We've got the a Victron power in unit. That's going to go on here and bolt on there. So I just need to remove these bolts. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this light around so you guys can see, and I can actually see a little bit better. So I do apologise for the bad lighting. Hopefully you can see that. Yes, that's great. So it's going to... Okay, it's always worrying when you run into a problem like that. And it's a real problem here because we don't have, well, we have virtually no mobile phone reception here. So when we lose power, we not only lose the internet, obviously we lose the internet, but we can't even go online to search for a problem, you know. So I had to go all the way to the bottom of the driveway where there's like 1 bar of mobile phone signal, and I managed to Google the problem, and sure enough someone else has had the same problem before, and I went onto an online forum and found out the solution to the problem. But yeah, it can be, at least I'll never, the thing is I remember what the problem was. I'll remember it next time. That's the point I'm making. So it's one of these things where I think what I will actually do is I'm going to write that up and put it on a card on the wall, so that in the future, if this ever happens again, like in 2 years' time, I won't forget. I'll remember, if you like. So yeah, but I think we need a transfer switch. I think a transfer switch is really important. Right, so I'm just going to put that on there. There we go. Yep, I think that's good. There. Yep, I'm happy with that. And there's a screw hole there. Now I've got these screws which are the perfect length to not go into, yeah, okay, that's fine. Not go through the MDF. I've actually also put a couple of washers on the end just to be doubly sure they don't poke through. So I think we're good there. Right, I'm just going to put that in quite loose. Yep, happy with that. Got one there. And one down here. And one more. Right, and then we just need to do these up. So, a washer, spring washer, and then to do these up here. So washer, spring washer. There we go. Oh, just knocked one of these off. Okay, so we're going to come in on input number 1 here. Just going to take that off. Now, I have actually modified this power in for to be able to take fuses. So you can actually, it's a very simple modification. Victron do sell a unit that takes fuses and actually has a circuit board and has little red LEDs. So if a fuse is blown, an LED will appear. But it's a lot more expensive. So it's a very simple modification. You just literally need to put some nuts and bolts in here to be able to accept fuses. I've made a video about it before, so I'll put a link to that in the description if you want to see that. I won't tighten that all the way yet. I'll just wait until, here we go. Right, so negative goes on the bottom. Here we go. That's as tight as I dare. There we go. I'm not worrying about torque settings because there's a limit to how tightly you can do this up without damaging the plastic behind. So I've done that pretty much as tight as I can go without cracking the plastic. Yeah, I'm not going to go any tighter than that. So that's fine. And then we have one of these little dividers here, which will go down. Yes, that's correct. Right, so that goes here. And then that's, normally you would connect it to the top bus bar, but we're connecting it here because we have the fuse. Do it. There we go. Happy with that. Yeah, that's seriously tight. Let's just straighten that up a bit. You see, I've twisted that round now, so I'm gonna, oh, okay, here we go. Right, so I'm happy with that. Let's just get this cover back on here so it doesn't get lost. So, yeah, let's just double check the okay. Right, so happy with all of that. That's all good. So let's get the covers back on. So that's the regular cover, which went on the old one. Right, so since we've got the power off, I'm going to hook up the earthing as well. And we've got our battery connectors already. I've already wired those in. We've got our network cable connected. And I've also connected an earth cable here. So somebody was asking me, you know, what do I do with the earthing? So at the moment it's just coming out here. And what we need to do is we need to connect it up to the fuse box. Okay, so time to power everything back on. Let's hope everything works. I'm going to put the mains on first. So we've got the mains on. Let's get these isolators on here. Let's get these on. And I'll turn the batteries on. Excellent. And then we'll see if this turns on now. Yeah, you see it doesn't turn on. So this is like a bug in the software. As you can see, it's not turning on. And that is because we need to unplug the network cable with it turned off. And then we turn it on. There we go. And then we plug the network cable back in. Okay, just let it do its thing. Not sure why it's turned off straight away again. There we go. Right, we're back on. Excellent. So, yeah, if you ever have that problem with the Quattro, that's the solution. I'll have to check online. Maybe there's this is like over a year old now, 2 years old. I think it's actually 2 years old, this inverter. So I know there is a firmware update, so maybe the new firmware, they've fixed that bug. Like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some instructions and put that on the cover here, just in case if I'm not here, someone else has the same problem. So, you know, if Dave was here on his own or something, he would know what to do. But like I said, I think future expansion, we need to have a transfer switch. In fact, we could have a transfer switch here. This would be a good place to have a transfer switch. So we could completely bypass the inverter if something went wrong or if we had to do some servicing. So yeah, guys, there we go. Everything's back on. Everything's safe. We've got the new power in unit hooked up. The solar cables have all the MC4 connectors in. In the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to be installing, and I don't have it here. Oh, yes, I do. Here we go. We're going to be installing the solar combiner box in the garage. So we're going to be installing the solar combiner box in the garage. We're also going to be identifying those solar cables because we've got 2 strings of cables. We've got 4 cables. I don't know which pair is which, so we need to work out a way to identify those cables, get them all labeled up. We'll put the MC4 connectors on the other ends of those cables. We'll screw this to the wall, get this all wired up, and then we need to start cabling the roof up for the solar panels. So that's all coming up in the next videos. Like and subscribe. Really enjoy reading your comments, and I'll catch you next time.